We are reconvening the council meeting, and we are now back on the record. We will take, how about we take about 3 minutes, Andrea? That's 3 minutes, and then we will begin. All right. We are back on the record. And item 4, items referred to committee, confirmation hearing. Andrea, would you please read this item into the record?
Ordinance 2023-0007, amending Section 202.08 of the Cuyahoga County Code regarding the Department of Development and enacting new Section 202.09 to establish the Department of Housing and Community Development. Good afternoon, committee members. If you recall, on March 14th, 2023, ordinance number 02-23-0007 to establish the Department of Housing and Community Development was referred to the Community Development Committee. After further consideration, it was determined that the Committee of the Whole should hear this item instead. For procedural purposes, assuming this item is referred out of this committee to the full body of the council, Council President Jones will ask for a motion to dispense with committee review and discharge ordinance number 02-023-0007 to the full council for second reading at tonight's council meeting.
All right. At this time, we have our presenter. Yes, Eric.
Good afternoon, County Council President, County Council. I do have a brief presentation. I don't know if that's able to be put up. And then is this the slide?
Yes, and Mr. Wobser, if you could identify yourself for the record as well.
I will.
Thank you.
My name is Eric Wipser.
Microphone on, the green button.
It's green.
Is it? Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Eric Wipser. I'm the Chief of Staff for Cuyahoga County. Thank you for hearing me today to discuss the creation of the Department of Housing and Community Development. This is my first time using the slide, so I'm not sure if I need to, is there a clicker or this one here? Let's see. I don't see the arrow. Oh, that, okay, that's it. That's the green arrow, got it. Sorry about that, apologize for my technical difficulties. Thank you for your time today. We just wanted to speak briefly. As you know, County Executive Ronayne has desired to create a new Department of Housing and Community Development. This is something that he came to the conclusion was necessary based on his own research during his campaign for becoming county executive, as well as the feedback he heard from multiple community partners in the community throughout this. As all of you know, we're in the midst of a national housing crisis that includes affordability. It also includes supply. A lot of the trends demonstrate that housing production in the United States dramatically decreased after the 2008 housing recession and still hasn't caught up to demand. And when you have shrinking housing sizes or household sizes, we haven't produced enough housing to keep up with demand, which exacerbates affordability. And so as he looked at best practices and talked to others in the community, he realized that Cuyahoga County and Greater Cleveland weren't doing enough to keep up with housing. In fact, just a recent report came out, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, that demonstrated in 2022, Greater Cleveland produced less housing than nearly every other. I think it was the last in a ranking of like 30 metropolitan areas in the entire country. And you contrast that with things that we've heard from those in the housing development industry who develop in Cleveland as well as other communities like Columbus, for example. And there are dramatically, what we've heard directly from some of those folks is that there are dramatically more resources coming from both Franklin County and the city of Columbus, in addition to having processes and policies that are more supportive of getting out of the way to the creation of housing. So that's just one example of what the housing need is and why this has risen to the occasion of becoming its own department. In addition to that, there was a group of community organizations that were brought together by Enterprise Community Partners last year. Over 30 community partners, including Cuyahoga County, were part of creating a report, A Tale of Two Markets, that talked not only about the supply of housing, but the quality of housing and the difficulties keeping people in secure housing. So all these things led to, and one of the recommendations of that report was that Cuyahoga County created a cabinet-level position specifically dedicated to housing. So Chris took that report seriously, took what we've heard nationally seriously, and he's recommending the creation of a new department, the mission of which you see on this slide is that the Cuyahoga County Department of Housing and Community Development works to improve the quality of life for all Cuyahoga County residents by creating and preserving affordable housing options, increasing home ownership opportunities, enhancing middle market neighborhoods, and implementing innovative and effective solutions to building stronger communities. And I think that's important is because when many people think about housing, they think about a variety of things. You know, the Cuyahoga County Planning Department recently did a report on transit-oriented development with the city of Cleveland and how it's important from a workforce perspective is that we're building up more housing along transportation corridors so that people can get to work and spend less of their income on transportation, affordable housing and keeping people in housing. Cleveland also, in greater Cleveland, has many neighborhoods that have missed investment due to things like redlining, and we're trying to reestablish a market in those neighborhoods or provide resources for the renovation of single-family homes. And so those are the types of priorities that County Executive Ronayne was embracing when he decided to ask for the creation of this department. And when you look at that, he wanted to do it in the simplest way possible without disrupting existing county operations. And so if you look at the current Department of Development, and I believe Director Hertig is here today and has been supported. In fact, this was an early recommendation of Director Hertig to Chris in a memo that he wrote during the transition into office, is that there are two divisions within the Department of Development, one with a focus on economic development and another with a focus on community development and housing. What's actually being recommended, I believe there's approximately about 28 employees in total in that, is that we would split out 10 positions from that or the division of housing and community development to create a department of housing and community development, which is demonstrated here. In addition to just pulling over that department, we're asking County Council to consider creating this. There would be two positions that would be created. We're recommending, if confirmed, that Sarah Parks Jackson, who runs that division in the Department of Development, would become the first Director of Housing and Community Development. She has decades of experience in the housing industry in Cuyahoga County, but we want to make sure if we promote her into that position that she's able to take on the new work of the county, including creating a strategic plan and finding additional resources that could go into housing from what the county currently has. So we'd want to create an administrator position under her and then one additional new position. So it would take the total employees, the full-time employees in that department from what is currently budgeted at 10 to 12 total. The 10 would move over and the 2 would be new positions. All of that would be funding out of the community development budget, so it would not have an impact on the general fund. In addition, almost all of the programs that we run out of the current division come from community development block grant resources, which mean they have very tight restrictions on what types of products they can fund. In addition to that, there's a program that Cuyahoga County Council has funded out of casino dollars that provides community grants. There's a CDBG program for community grants, and then the Muni Grant program, and then the CD supplemental, which is casino funded. What we want to do is take and enhance those resources by virtue of potentially doing a strategic plan that would engage stakeholders throughout the community, and then find other resources that we could put into housing and community development that aren't as tightly restricted so we could meet the vast majority of needs for housing in Cuyahoga County. But with that, I want to make sure I leave a lot of time for questions. I will end the presentation there and take questions from the council.
All right, are there any questions? Councilman Miller?
So, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, first, I would just say that that housing, along with health, education, and employment, is one of the 4 great pillars of economic and social success, and it tends to get less attention than the other 3, and it certainly is being worthy of being elevated to its own department. My question is, on a day-to-day basis, how do you see housing and community development operating differently under this structure?
Through the council president to Councilman Miller, I think the vast majority of the work that is currently done by the Division of Housing and Community Development will get done. So that's important. If there's a program that you like or the important work that's being done, it will continue. I think the first thing that you'll see that will be in addition to the current work of the department is that if confirmed, Director Parks Jackson will lead a strategic plan for housing. It's actually time to update. I think that the legislation of the county says every 5 years the housing plan should be updated. It is due for an update, so we want to engage our partners, and that would include those who build housing, those who occupy housing, nonprofits and advocates for the housing industry. We would, Director Parks Jackson, if confirmed, would pull that group together, make sure that we're pinpointing what the needs are of Cuyahoga County, again, across a variety of spectrums, from affordability to rehabbing of existing single-family homes, to infill housing, to transit-oriented development-related housing, and take a hard look at what the needs are, as well as looking at the best practices of what other communities are doing. I mentioned Franklin County and the city of Columbus as being viewed as being a leader in Ohio on these fronts. We'll dive deeper into what programs they're doing and ultimately adopt a plan. And simultaneously to going through that strategic planning process, which would dictate future decisions, we'd be looking to identify resources outside of CDBG by virtue of finding efficiencies in other areas or prioritizing housing for investment, because I think that gets back to your earliest point, which is that housing is a pillar of what we do. In fact, it was one of my first conversations with Sarah where she said that one of the things that she's most excited about is working with other agencies in the county that touch housing. And she mentioned specifically whether you're talking about reentry or reunification of families or any of the things that the county does through Health and Human Services. One of the most important factors in success in all of those areas is quality, affordable, and accessible housing. So I think you'll see better collaboration with the director level position. But those are just a few of the examples. But we want to align resources so that we can begin to invest additional resources into housing needs of the community.
Mr. President, Chief, is the new Housing and Community Development Department going to take on creating an expanded and much more effective response to lead-based paint, especially in the areas outside the city of Cleveland where there's much less available in terms of resources?
Through the council president to Councilman Miller, I can't speak specifically to expanding our efforts in lead. I do know that lead is very important, and ultimately safe, accessible housing is critical. So I think lead would be, and what's currently being done through the Lead Coalition and the potential expansion of that into more jurisdictions would absolutely be something we'd look closely at during the strategic planning process that I mentioned in the coming year.
Mr. President, Chief, final question. Clearly, we have a very serious shortage of affordable housing. What do you think is needed to substantially close that gap?
I think that through the council president to Councilman Miller, one of the most important things that I've learned in this process of creating the department and working with Ms. Parks Jackson and others is that there's a spectrum of affordability, from workforce to the permanent supportive housing for those who have experienced homelessness. I think we need to look at every spot rung along the way of affordability. For example, we've met with probably 4 or 5 housing developers, both in the inner ring suburbs of greater Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, as well as core neighborhoods, who are working on projects that, while they don't meet the affordability standards of our CDBG restricted funds, absolutely are geared towards workforce housing and a lower average income than the market rate would do, that have very small gaps in their products that, because of inflation and everything else, that would bring collectively, hundreds of units of housing onto the market. One of the things that we could do is play a gap financing role in workforce housing as a way to speed up production, for example. But there's a variety of things that I think we need to be able to do to enhance affordability in a variety of ways. And I think that that's something that is at the core of the creation of this department.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. To Chief of Staff Webster. You may have answered this already. If you did, I didn't catch it. But what role do you see this proposed department playing with the county land bank?
Through the council president to Councilman Kelly, the county land bank is one of several critical partners to housing. Their ability to buy, remediate, and hold land to bring that land back to market to consolidate both for purposes of economic development and residential development. So I don't think you'll see a major shift from how we deal with them now, except for that as we add more capacity to our own work in housing, we'll be able to partner with them in a greater way to help them accomplish the shared goals of bringing land back to market productively, making sure that some of that can be developed affordably, and that we're bringing infill housing back to the neighborhoods that have been hit so hard in both the suburbs of Greater Cleveland and the city neighborhoods of Cleveland by demolition, et cetera. We really want to find ways to help people continue to stay in their neighborhoods. To do that, we'll have to provide a variety of housing types in those neighborhoods from what's there now, and I think the Land Bank can be a critical partner to accomplishing those goals.
Thank you, that's all. Thanks.
Organizationally, where does the Director of Housing report up?
Through the council president to Councilwoman Stevens. It would be a cabinet level position, which is elevated one level up from where it is now within the Department of Development. Currently, it would report and would report directly to my office, but we have posted a Chief of Integrated Development position that would have responsibilities for economic development, housing community development, public works, and major projects. Ultimately, if confirmed, Director Parks Jackson would report through that chief, because we want to make sure, and that's one of the things from the community development side of this. We talk a lot about housing, but it is housing and community development, and you know as well as anyone in this room that housing and infrastructure and economic development don't happen in silos from each other, but to really rebuild a community, they have to be done in an integrated way. That is the approach that we want to take with the Department of Integrated Development, and Director Parks Jackson, if confirmed, would be a part of that reporting structure, but would be one level elevated and one level closer to the county executive.
Would she still sit at the cabinet table?
Through the council president, Councilman Stevens, absolutely. Our chiefs that are there are not meant to take someone's place in the cabinet. They're just there to play a coordinating and strategic role on a day-to-day basis, but the cabinet meeting would absolutely include the director.
Well, I've had this most of my lifelong affair with housing and housing development, and it's not just the affordable piece that we need the chief and his team to be focused on. If we get our act together in economic development, we need workforce housing.
Absolutely.
Housing that worker bees can afford. It is unfortunate that the new housing construction, recently I was on the west side. I know people don't believe us East Siders go west of downtown, but some of us do. And I was on Detroit, so I wiggled back into the area where Marouse has been instrumental in doing redevelopment. And there was a starting price point on a sale of a unit for $500,000. That is not affordable by the average worker. They're no longer low and moderate income residents. They're, together a couple or partners their household income is $125 to $150. But if they have kids, they cannot afford a $500,000 mortgage. So we also need the capacity to figure out how we keep workers in Cuyahoga County.
100%.
And so there's got to be some diversity. I'm just making a pitch for diversity and the kinds of things that the new team will be looking to bring into Cuyahoga County.
Through the council president to Councilwoman Stevens, well said. We completely agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
To the chair, thank you, sir. Hi, Chief. So in the proposed ordinance, it states that the department shall provide healthy and inclusive programming that enhances the quality of life. How will that be measured? First part of that. And then are there any other duplicative services happening in neighborhoods that we are currently aware of? And if there are, how will we address this?
Through the council president to Councilwoman Turner, could you repeat the second question? I was doing a little research on the first question, which I'm ready to answer, but I missed the second one while I was doing that.
Well, go ahead and answer.
Okay, I'll do the first one. Okay. As far as metrics, the strategic plan that I referenced earlier, one of the specific goals of that strategic plan will be to develop metrics. But I think something that we know we want to do as it relates to creating the healthier community, healthy and inclusive programming and quality of life is we want to take a place-based approach. So it's not necessarily just the provision of housing, but it's where housing takes place, meeting the needs of an individual community, ensuring that that housing, where appropriate, is adjacent to access to jobs or public transportation that can link people to jobs, to centers of economic development. We want to create virtuous cycles of where the county is investing infrastructure, housing, and development dollars so that we're changing the trajectories of the communities that are located within Cuyahoga County. And we don't want to see those investments just get made in a scattered way, but in a direct approach, because I think we've seen when you do make concentrated, targeted, place-based investments in communities, you can change the trajectory of those communities in a positive way. When you're not making those investments, they can tip in the opposite way. So those are kind of the goals as we use housing and community development, which we think is different than economic development, in that you really are focused on bringing value to that place and ultimately the people who live in that place. But when you do that well in a concerted way, you add stability to housing prices, to demand, and we think, the recent article last week that came out as to Cuyahoga County's population continuing to decline and the region's population continuing to decline, one of the most important things that the county can do in partnership with its suburban communities is create demand again to live in those communities. And the assets of those communities are different than the assets of the communities in the exurban counties of our region. But we have to focus on investing in those. So it will be walkability, proximity to job centers, access to transit, walkability to neighborhood parks or community downtowns. And we think that's a community development effort. We don't want to take away from the important work that economic development is doing to invest in targeted industries, but it should be an equal priority to sustain and grow population in our suburbs, or ultimately we'll be doing this job with fewer and fewer people and fewer tax dollars and serving a harder community.
I think you kind of touched on what I meant by duplicative services. I wanted to know who were your partners and.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I can answer that quickly too, is through the council president to Councilwoman Turner. Each community is different. As I said, they have different assets, they have different challenges and different capacity levels. We want to meet each community, and that could be a suburb of the county, or it could be a larger neighborhood within Cleveland in the county. We want to meet everybody where they're at, identify their needs, and not provide redundant services, but instead enhance the services that are being provided, whether that's the resources or technical expertise of folks like hopefully future Director Parks Jackson.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Real quick.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, nice seeing you. Just, I fully support this, and Sarah Parks Jackson is a rock star. And I got a couple calls from the constituents about this. It's growing government, right? It's a new department. As the team is developing the whole assessment of our county government, are any of the departments throughout the bureaucracy have used their useful life? Are you thinking about taking any away?
Through the council president to Councilman Sweeney, we're not actively looking at eliminating any departments. I think we're evaluating the work of all of our departments, and you could see some restructuring or a change in course for some departments, but we're not recommending anything specific at this time.
You're still in your due diligence. Through the chair to our chief, as the chief of Katie Gallagher, she's like, we're going to get on this, take it really serious, and then recommendations need to be done.
Yep.
This is one that you came up with because you did your due diligence up front.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. President.
Eric, as you look to implement innovative and effective solutions to building stronger communities, have you considered the faith-based community and partnering with them?
Through the council president to the council president, I think absolutely that when used in appropriate ways, faith-based partners, in fact, the county already has many, many faith-based partners, both in the faith community or nonprofits that have sprung up or have a tie to the faith community. And we want, like I was saying to Councilwoman Turner, we want to meet communities where they're at, and we want to partner with those who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work. And oftentimes, and you know this well from your own community-based work, when you're in the trenches and you look up at who's standing there next to you, they're coming from a faith-based community because of their values and their commitment to helping those in need. And so I think we can absolutely partner with faith-based communities. We just got to make sure we do it in an appropriate way and that it's to the benefit of the larger community.
All right. In Slavic Village, there is, I don't know if you're familiar with Reverend Richard Gibson. He's the pastor of Elizabeth Baptist Church. And you may not know the name of the church, but It was a church that Arsenio Hall's father was the pastor of
Wow.
many years ago. But this church, again, is in Slavic Village. And over the last decade, they have partnered with the county, worked with, I believe, our Department of Development, but most certainly with the land bank, as Councilman Kelly mentioned. And they simply just looked around and at the dilapidation and the eyesores around them, and they started fixing up what was around them. They have buildings and property, so they've added to the wealth in that sense of the church through those properties, but they have offered social services through the buildings that they have renovated and rehabbed, from homeless services to a variety of others, and now they're looking to buy a few more or renovate a few more houses near them for transitional housing. So they started with the base of just being a real estate investor. Let's buy a property and fix it up around us, and then deliver service through what we fix up, whether it's simply to rent the property or not. So that model, it's been in place. They've been doing it, but it's never been scaled up to the point where we've reached out to the faith-based community and said, fix up a house right around you. Start small and do what's in your wheelhouse to do. But that could be, again, an approach, and if that's something this department could focus on, would certainly be an asset.
Absolutely. And what I'd say is that's something that we should look at. Those place-based partners, including faith-based community that are in those neighborhoods, is something we can take a very close look at in the strategic plan and figure out are there resources that the county can deploy as gap financing, or just to, even loans to help them continue to build up that inventory on behalf of the communities where they serve.
I can see there's an educational campaign just to train, to educate, and to teach them how to be a developer in that sense, or a real estate investor, just within their own scope and neighborhood.
That's great.
Are there any other questions, comments?
Of course, I have one more question.
Sure, Councilwoman, the floor is yours.
There are some limits on what the department can currently do for development, specifically housing projects. And sometimes a little more cash than has traditionally been considered is needed. You spoke a little bit ago about looking to some of our other sources of funding to try to be more flexible. Is that one of the first things that will go into the strategic planning evaluation process?
Through the council president to Councilwoman Stevens, yes, and I would even say it is such a large priority for the administration that you may see some of those things happen on parallel paths where we know we need more resources to put into housing. We know we're going to have a great plan to understand how to deploy those resources, but we don't want to wait for a 6 to 12-month planning process to begin to galvanize resources because we know we're going to need them. In fact, when I was meeting with a developer recently, they were talking about the city of Columbus. The city of Columbus puts in $50 million annually from a dedicated tax to support affordable housing, and then the county has a transit-oriented development program. Those are the types of tools we know we're going to need both from the city and the county here, and we want to begin to identify those resources even as we build out the plan.
And they additionally, in Columbus, I get completely jealous of my peer group of housing professionals in Columbus. Literally, in a round of 4% tax credits year before last, they took 8 out of 12 projects because the city figured out how to help all of the developers leverage their portfolio. They created a separate fund outside of municipal government where the big boys invested, and that $10 million was leveraged 5-6 different ways to help them pull in all of those 4% bond or low-income housing tax credit dollars. And we need to begin to figure out how to pull our partners in. And I'm so glad that you and Chris have taken the lead on making sure this kind of thing can begin to happen in Geauga again.
That's great. I remember when the historic tax credit at the state level came out, and the first 5 or 6 rounds of that were very similar in that Cleveland developers were grabbing 8 out of 12 projects at the state level.
Remember, that's when I was consulting, and we pulled in 11 out of the first 100.
And particularly now with the changes with affordability and historic tax credits at the state level, and hopefully they can, through advocacy, change some of that. I know they're working on it, but we want Cleveland to be leaders again and leveraging all the dollars for our community, particularly in housing. So we look forward to being a part of that conversation with you and County Council.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Right. Who does the Director of Development report to?
Through the council president to the council president, The Director of Development will report eventually to the Chief of Integrated Development, which will oversee the Department of Development, the Department of Housing and Community Development, Public Works, and then have direct responsibility for major projects that are undertaken. Until that position is created, both the Department of Development Director as well as the, if confirmed, Director Parks Jackson would report to my office.
Any further questions? All right. Okay,
Thank you
Eric.
very much. I appreciate it.
At this time, we'll entertain a motion to refer this item to the full body of council for second reading.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
recommend forwarding this to the full body of council to move as expeditiously as possible, considering the need for housing, workforce housing, and affordable housing in Cuyahoga County.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right.
Resolution 2023-0055, confirming the county executive's appointment of Sarah Parks Jackson upon her taking the oath of office as Director of Housing and Community Development.
Welcome to the confirmation hearing at which council will consider the appointment of Sarah Parks Jackson as Director of the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Good afternoon. I am, again, Sarah Parks Jackson, the current Deputy Director of the Housing and Community Development Division of the Department of Development. Just a few tidbits about myself. I began my career in affordable housing working for what was then Neighbors Organized for Action and Housing, becoming the first on-site manager for the senior housing development Rainbow Place on East 79th. I continued my career in affordable housing, working for the National Corporation for Housing Management in Cleveland and San Francisco, California. The skills learned and experience gained allowed me to take a position with the National Council of Senior Citizens Housing Management Corporation, which was located in Washington, D.C. I served then as the Chief of Property Management with oversight of 39 senior housing projects across the United States. It is with NCSC that I learned the development side of affordable housing, as NCSC both developed and managed HUD-subsidized senior housing. Upon returning home, my career took a pivot as I accepted a position with the City of Cleveland's newly created Small Business Office in the Department of Economic Development. Under the leadership and guidance of Joe Marinucci is where I learned the intricacies of economic development and acquired my certification as an economic development finance professional. The time came, however, to pivot back to what I knew and had a passion for, affordable housing. I was selected by Paul Herdig to fill the position of Development Housing Specialist in the Department of Development. Through the years, I have served as Administrative Officer, Program Officer, Community Development Officer, Housing and Community Development Administrator, and Housing and Community Development Deputy Director. With each position, I learned a new skill, from how to issue private activity bonds on behalf of the county to how to underwrite market rate housing development loans. I was further able to become a fellow in the CSU Public Officials Leadership Academy 17th class and earn my Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt. I've had the pleasure to serve as the City of Cleveland Operation Efficiency Task Force External Lead, Consumer Affairs Action Team under Mayor Frank Jackson, as well as serving on the Starting Point Loan Review Committee. Currently, I serve as a member of the CHN Housing Capital Advisory Board, the Cuyahoga Home Consortium, and the Cuyahoga County Community Improvement Corporation. On a personal note, I am the wife of a retired Cleveland police officer, the mother of one son, and the bonus mom of two. I am a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, where I currently serve as my chapter's Leadership Development Chairman. There have been a number of firsts in my life, and I am excited for the opportunity to be considered as your first director of Cuyahoga County's first Department of Housing and Community Development. Thank you.
I'll just start, I guess. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say thank you for stepping up, and I'm excited to work with you, and just please let me know how I can help. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman.
You would read the item into the record first.
I can read it again, but I did read the item into the record already.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, well, we'll continue on. Councilman, that was a senior moment there,
That's
so,
okay.
our first one
We
ever.
created quite the impression with you, Mr. President. No, thank you for being here, and congratulations, assuming everything goes the way we hope. What would you say would be your first, priority in your first, what do they call it, 100 days? What would be the priorities for you?
Councilman Tooman, the priority for me right now is to get an understanding of the housing needs throughout all 59 communities in Cuyahoga County. So we are looking to convene a couple of groups, First Suburbs, Enterprise, to talk about what the needs are, because I have about 10 reports currently from various organizations. Those 10 reports boil down to a need for affordable housing, whether it's reentry, whether it's senior, whether it's coming out of homelessness. The need is for affordable housing. But we also have to look at how we are defining affordable housing in various communities, because it is different by neighborhood and by income level as to what can be affordable. So we want to be able to take a really good look. And that will be the first start of the strategic housing plan.
Okay.
Meeting with folks and
I
understanding.
appreciate that. I wish you well and luck, and council's here anytime you need us. So good luck and congratulations.
Jack?
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't really have any questions because I've had the honor of working with Sarah Parks Jackson for a long time as chairing the Economic Development Committee, and I have got a chance to see her in practice, and I know that she's going to do a fantastic job with this new responsibility, and good luck to you, and bring all kinds of good joy to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm so excited to see you before us today. When I got here in November of 21, I thought you were planning your retirement. And I'm so elated that you have more to give and that you were really excited about this new role. You were more than qualified, but you seem to have found some energy and some extra passion. So I'm excited for you. As your Delta sister, I rarely wear pink, but my nails are pink for you today in honor of this historic appointment. So I just wish you the best in this role, and looking to be a partner. I'm excited about some work that we're already planning together. So best wishes.
Save you for last then. All right. Sarah, it's really just a testament to the fact that we all know you. You're a known quantity, and we all value, and I've enjoyed the time we have worked together. So I actually don't have a lot of questions myself, because I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm getting. So we don't have to belabor too much. But I will ask the question that I asked to Eric earlier. In this department as the director, do you see having stronger partnerships with the faith-based community, and what I see is their capacity to just do development in their own neighborhoods, but the education that they lack? Some churches have it, but not all. But could you see that being part of your vision of what you would do in this department?
Council President, I do see active participation by the faith-based community. As a matter of fact, I believe there are some currently who are members of a group with the Land Bank, We most recently provided the land bank with $1.5 million so that they could provide $50,000 to individual groups to do rehab of housing, to acquire housing for those that are hard to house. So it's much easier to use an intermediary such as the land bank rather than have a very small nonprofit or a small business organization have to go through, unfortunately, the challenges of the procurement system sometime with all the documents that are needed. So we use the land bank, and the land bank is making those loans. But we will also be talking to the faith-based community regarding housing and the housing needs in the city of Cleveland, in our inner ring suburbs, and also in the outer ring suburbs. As we look to expand the knowledge, we'll be looking at developers assisting those organizations as a community benefit, and anything else we can do to inspire more people to procure existing housing and fix it up.
Does the land bank do educational training? And the reason I say that is I remember when I graduated college, I joined the family business, but I watched the TV infomercial by this real estate investor, Carlton Sheets. But he was selling CDs and telling you can buy property, and I did it. I bought it. I bought the tapes, watched them and I bought property. And that's how I learned, and they gave you all the forms and everything. It was an educational process, and you learn to just buy property, you start small, house here, and you grow from there. That basic information, I just see so much potential in a church that has a secular 501c3 and the ability to just do that, buy a house and fix it up. And you get a skill set from doing one house and continue, and you get to do what Reverend Richard Gibson did at Elizabeth Baptist Church. So he doesn't have to be the only one. Others could do it as well. They don't have to do it to the scale that he did it, but just to learn and to be able to do that. Where do they get the educational component? Does the land bank say, hey, come on in, we'll show you how to do what we do? Or, every 501c3 and CDC knows how to do this. But do they actually teach someone to be their competitor, so to speak? And does anyone do that? And if there's answers yes, then that's great. But if it's not, would this department be able to fill that gap, that educational gap that might, encourage those to do what they're capable of doing?
Councilman, to the best of my ability, to my knowledge, I do not believe that the land bank provides a standard type education. They probably work with the other nonprofits they have. That is something that as a department we can look at assisting in the facilitation of, where we know that there are small developers who actually know what they're doing and know how to do it correctly, taking other smaller developers under their wing and teaching them, this is how you acquire the properties, this is how you do your rehab, and some of the nuanced stuff, like this is how you create a budget.
Right.
This is what happens when you go over budget or when prices increase, because all of those things matter. Developers, small developers, are just small businesses, and they need to understand the tenets of being a small business owner.
So unless you said it, I missed it. Who helps with that?
I think we can help with that. I think the current Department of Development, through the Economic Development staff, can help with that, because there are a number of organizations that Economic Development currently works with that works with small businesses. I don't think the fact that they're doing real estate, to me, is not as important as them understanding the small business principles and practices, and having that budget and knowing what happens when there's cost overruns. Those things are not just particular to acquiring properties. That's being a small business owner, and I think we can help in that way.
All right, congratulations Up to this point, Director, there are still housing that needs demolition, primarily on the east side of the county. Do you think there will be or are there conversations to address this?
To the Councilwoman, I believe that we will have conversations about all facets of all types of housing. We will look at where demolition needs to occur because in working with our cities, they will tell us what their specific needs are. If the specific need is for demolition or infill housing and affordable housing, is it rental? Is it for sale? Those are the types of things we want to know. My dream would be that we acquired enough funding from philanthropic organization and banks where we could have a large enough fund where we could tell a city, if you need $200,000 for demolition, we can offer it. We're a road away from that, but that would be, at the end of the day, to have that pot controlled by the county, to be able to assist the cities in those community development type activities they need, the clearing of land, either for additional residential or for commercial. So yes, that is part of the plan. As we go forward, we will be looking at that as well.
Because I think there were roughly, if I remember correctly, around 4,000 or something properties that still, from the first time that we put in money for demolition. And I don't know if you know is there any other funds out there for that in regards, or was it all utilized?
The funding, Councilwoman, the funding that the county had was used. I do believe the land bank still has funding for demolition. However, it may as well be targeted. So again, that would be something that we would have to look at because this county approved $50 million for demolition, and before that, we had used some federal money for demolition in the suburban communities and in the city of Cleveland. So we would also be talking to the city of Cleveland about their funding and what they're putting in for demolition, either through their general fund or their ARPA dollars, and how we can coordinate certain activities with the city.
Second question, according to some reports, I don't know if you answered this, and I apologize if you did. The gap of home ownership for Black households is roughly around 36% compared to 75% for white households. As the director, going forward, what policies and initiatives would you plan to institute to address this issue, and what approach would you take to address the housing gap in home ownership for underserved and community of color within the new department?
Councilwoman, over the years, Cuyahoga County has consistently provided down payment assistance funds to aid first-time home buyers. This is through a federal source and therefore is limited to a person's income being no more than 80% of the area median income. It is limited to the 51 communities that we can serve with that funding because we have 6 other communities in Cuyahoga County who receive direct funding, so we cannot put our funding there. So first of all, it would be funding. Funding that had no limitations or little limitations, small restrictions. In addition to that, we have to talk to, I keep going back to this, we have to talk to the cities, we have to understand the communities. For example, Maple Heights has a higher home ownership ratio than its neighbor, Bedford Heights. Also has a higher home ownership ratio than the city of Beechwood. Why? We have to understand why. Especially when you look at Maple and Bedford, the difference between the African-American community is 5%. So what makes Maple Heights a place where people want to buy a house, but not Bedford Heights? And why is Beechwood's home ownership rate lower? Is that by design? We don't know. We have to talk to the mayors, and we have to talk to other people in the community to understand what their goal is for their particular area and how we can assist in that.
So our disparity study was not inclusive of housing, just housing needs or whatever? Do you know?
I don't know, but as we move forward, we will be looking at all needs. Low income, people have different needs. People and communities of color have different needs. We need to understand all of it and where it has a higher impact and where it has a lower impact and why.
How do you think that you're going to go about understanding? Do you feel that speaking on a regular basis to the mayors and managers to try to, galvanize that information that you're looking for, making a presence at the mayors and managers meeting to kind of understand some of these issues, or are you going to just take this initiative on your own?
No, Councilwoman, we are going to talk to mayors and managers. We're going to talk to First Suburbs Consortium, and we're going to talk to mayors individually. Because a lot of the mayors, through the Muni Grant Program, I've had the opportunity to have conversations with the mayors, and they don't have a problem telling you what they want, and they don't have a problem telling you what they need. So having that conversation and seeing where it matches their neighbor or it doesn't is something that we have to look at, and we have to see. For example, I don't think Hunting Valley wants affordable housing, but do they have a community development need for roads and sidewalks? Those are the types of things that we have to find out, because we are housing and community development, and we must be able to help all of the communities within the county.
I was just thinking about the demolition when Yvonne mentioned it. Not too big on it, and I was the primary sponsor of our $50 million demolition fund. So we've done a lot of demo, but my thought process is evolving. Maybe that's a good way of putting it. We have a Warner Swayze project that we're working with the city of Cleveland and their former director Jeff Epstein at the time, and they were going to tear that building down. They were going to demolish it, and it was going to cost $3 million. And Jeff Epstein said, well, if you're going to spend $3 million to demolish it, credit me with $3 million and let me get the rest of the funding, and we'll see if I can renovate it. Okay? So that was kind of a novel thought. And he actually did it, and they're working on it. It's obviously in the process now. But the very concept of saying, I'm not going to demolish it, let's use the money you were going to spend on demolishing it and let's fix it up. Why couldn't that concept apply to a house that might cost $10,000 to $12,000 to demolish, and the person said, well, the city gave me $12,000 and I found the other funding, why not fix it up instead of demolishing it? That thought just came to me as a model. Is that something that would make sense, and would that be a tool that this department might consider using?
Council President, we rely on others to make certain determinations about whether a structure should be demolished. If a house doesn't have what we call good bones, that you're just putting good money after bad. Cities with their individual inspectors will make the determination, because there's a process that they must go through before that home can even be demolished. It's got to be condemned, and it's got to be condemned for specific reasons. While we were in the height of the demolition process, we saw pictures of houses that we were like, should this really be demolished? But then when we found out the aspects of the interior where the wood had already rotted and what it would actually cost to rehab that home, which is almost like building it from the ground up, some of which had asbestos or lead, in often situations, it's just cheaper to do the demolition, but cities will if they think a house can be rehabbed. I think they reach out to the land bank and others and make that happen. But it's a matter of their call as to what that structure can withstand. Can you put people in it? As the owner of a Century home, I completely understand, because sometimes I want to demolish mine, but it's got good bones. So, we go about fixing it up. But in some instances, you might see the house from the outside and it looks great. And when you walk in, there's nothing there to recover. Pipes have been taken out, wood's deteriorating, and it's just, the cost benefit is better to demolish than to retain.
This time, we're going to turn things over to Cheryl, Councilwoman Stevens.
So over the years, naturally, Ms. Parks Jackson and I have interacted. And I find that Sarah speaks HUD, which is a language all unto itself, that year after year builds new vocabulary and dialogue. She also speaks the state language of funding, and she speaks local government. And I find that the county executive and his team have done a great job in selecting her for this position because she thinks beyond the box that she's in. One of the best moments was when she called me just under 2 years ago. I figured out how to get $56 million from the state of Ohio. So she's looking outside of our box in Cuyahoga County to use other people's money to help our residents look better, be stronger, and be taken care of. I would hope that every director that Mr. Wobser and Mr. Ronayne bring to us speaks a language of their industry, looks at ways to go outside of our box to bring our constituents better opportunities for living. And with that, I truly support Sarah's promotion and this opportunity for Cuyahoga County to do more in housing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President?
Yes. The floor is yours.
To Sarah, I just appreciate all your dedication and service and support your nomination, and I would like my name added, please.
Let's add Councilman Sweeney's name.
Council Conwell.
Stevens.
Ron?
And on behalf of my colleague Simon, I want to add her name too.
Well, you're taking all the suspense out of the vote.
So,
add my name
Mr.
as
Chairman,
well.
can I
Yes.
move the vote?
Yes, please make the motion.
Can we expeditiously move forward with the nomination and the vote for Sarah Parks Jackson as our first and foremost Director of Housing?
Second.
And we're moving for the second reading. So it's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All
Thank
right.
you all very, very much.
Good job. All right. Mhm. All right.
It's a block grant?
At this time, is there any miscellaneous business? If not, our meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 5 p.m.
You'll get a kick out of this.